Meeting to order. Roll call.
Ms. Buckout,
Here.
Mr. Olson,
Here.
Mr. Walker, Mr. Erkins,
Here.
Mr. Rastegar.
Here.
Right. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none, moving forward. I know recently you've heard about the Daughters of the Nile conference that was here. 1,100 ladies from around every 50 states and 4 countries. I had the honor of going and doing, I guess it was more of a thank you and closing remarks when they were here, and they gave us a Stepping Stones to Happiness. I think your staff received one as well. It's a $25 donation to their fund in the board's name. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. It was a lot of pomp and circumstance. It was really interesting to see. So they were a great group to have, and I know you probably touch upon that when you.
It's going to be in the June report, so that was a
Okay.
June event, so it'll be next month. But yes, we did receive a certificate as well on behalf of the Boise Center staff. So they donated, I believe, to the Canadian
Okay.
group.
This one's, yeah, this one's, I think, the US one. So
And it was on behalf, we got great comments. I can't wait to share more stories about that for next month, but it was a great conference. A lot of challenges, but not much better of a team building activity than doing a conference for 1,100 people, bringing all departments together, all hands on deck. Again, it was kind of the first time I've seen that since post-COVID. So it was fun.
yeah, I think I walked out with the folks from Brazil. I think we had Brazil, Bolivia, Canada, US. Not sure if I'm missing any of the countries, but anyway, it was great to have them in house. So I just wanted to share that they gave us that honor. Okay, on to the,
Are you a member of the Daughters of the Nile?
I am not.
You're legal though, right? You're related to
Well,
a Shriner.
I am, and I'm also a Shriner patient, or former Shriner patient. I found that out that I could be. So anyway, so that was.
It was a full circle moment. They were very touched to find out Kristen had been a Shriners kid at that point and they were having her speak. So thank you for
Yeah.
willingness
it was
to do
great.
that.
It was great.
And it was a long night for you, so thank you.
All
Okay,
right, on to approval of the minutes dated May 21st, 2024. Do
Move it.
I have a second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. On to the monthly activity and finance report.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for your time today. This is the first month that I don't have any photos. We were actually so busy with conferences and conventions that the team didn't get many photos taken of the events in a way that was, a lot of it was back of house stuff or things more internal. But next month again with it, we've had Kid for a Night and several other large events that have happened that we got some good photos for June's report. But this is the first month that I didn't have any activity updates on the photo side. On the operation updates, we're continuing to update several of our internal support documents. This last month, we updated a vendor one sheet, which is for all the vendors that come in for trade shows. Capacities map, which is a very big project and undertaking because I have done it in the past myself. And it's crossing your T's and dotting your I's multiple ways because however you face a different room setup, whether it's a theater setup or a round, trade show, all of those need max capacities and fire codes taken into account. And where we can get 1 more or 2 more rows really impacts our sales team. And so we really tried to sharpen the pencil, make sure we've got accurate information going out to our sales team on our capacity sheets. So that was a project undertaken by several in the room and appreciate their efforts. We actually got into, for the first time in our history, a new rigging agreement. We've historically used PSI as the rigger in the certified rigger inside of Boise Center. Valiant Productions does a lot of work locally. Many of you probably know them. We've entered into an agreement to use them as our preferred rigger in the facility. Brent comes from a background, his grandfather, I believe, owned Boise Rigging Supply, a lot of rigging knowledge, a lot of rigging expertise that lives within that team, and we're tapping into that. So we've entered into a new rigging agreement as there to make them our preferred rigger for the building. On the event side for May, we had 29 total events in May. Those 3 largest that are up on the screen there were all 6-figure revenue events and conferences. So the 2024 Highway Safety Summit, APCO Western Regional Conference for Public Safety, and Western Power Sports National Sales Meeting, all brought in 6 figures of revenue for the center. And that's a great month for May, and that plays into the financials you get a chance to hear from a little bit later. On the food and beverage side, we did 3 very large food and beverage services with Idaho Best Awards, about 900, Idaho Health Priorities, we served about 800, and then the St. Luke's Leadership Conference for about 700. So those were our largest food and beverage services for the month of May. Staff activity, Ali Rabordi, it was actually kind of a quieter month for travel. Ali Rabordi attended MPI WEC conference, which was in Louisville. And then we had, and this is a June report because it was straddling right there at the end of May and the beginning of June, but Alan Cushing, our operations manager, Shira Hotvet, an event manager, both attended venue management school, which I've attended myself, graduated from. It is an outstanding curriculum. It's an outstanding opportunity to get networked with other venue managers, counterparts all over the nation. So they came back from Florida with a plethora of information and ideas and things to kind of get motivated us as a team. They're going to do a presentation to our staff about what they've learned from VMS. Shira finished year 2, so she graduated. Alan finished his year 1. And it's a 2-year course, so Alan will go back for year 2. We usually support 1 employee going through that program each year in the year 1, and 1 finishing off in year 2. Some of the revenues, as we've talked about, this is kind of the new slides that we've been looking at. Again, May, another record. As I take a look here, came in just shy of $1 million, $954,000 revenue month. And again, our second high would have been 2022, and then 2023 following right behind that. And as you can kind of see the trajectory, we continue to outpace the prior year, right in line with what we kind of expected and forecasted. A little increase because of the increased costs on certain things has really driven that number to that revenue number up to the higher percentage, but a very similar year. As I've talked about, we have hit a saturation point for the space that we've got. And this is that revenue management along with continuing to increase prices on things that are in higher demand or that are driven up by labor costs or the cost of goods. Currently year to date, we're sitting at about 5.9 million on the Boise Center revenue side. And then compared to budget, we're currently right in line with what we've forecasted on the budget. Probably hit right around that, if not a little above, outperform that. Gross profit and gross margin, changed the slide just so it wasn't so dark, is the only difference here from last month. Made a little lighter gray to fit the look of the slides of all the others. May gross profit came in at 22.4. Current fiscal year, we're sitting at 21.49. So we're outperforming the goal. This is a great number to see as we continue to get more strategic in how we're managing the gross profit in our space. A lot of that is those additional events when we get what we consider to be kind of the covered costs, all covered from the larger events. Those filler events is what really drives the gross profit number up, we've noticed over this year in particular. So. Lodging room revenues, similar story. Again, had another, and actually this is the April came in at a record at this point in time. But as you start looking, very similar to the last 2 years, there's not a big variance. There's some things that happened in March of 22 that had some impact there. But for the most part, we're starting to see that kind of leveling off for the last 3 years on lodging room revenues. For this month alone, it was about 17, almost 18 million total in revenues for the lodging room side. On demand, similar story here, same thing, up a little bit higher. This is the total rooms. This is the demand of Group 1, which is about the district's boundaries from the STR report. And again, we're seeing this just really play into very much into the next slide as you get into your occupancies and your ADRs. So on your top line here, you have your average daily rates. We're seeing, you can barely see that green line tucked in behind it now. Those numbers are coming in very similar as to the prior year, but they're starting to climb up. And as you can see from that bottom line, which is your occupancy, it's starting to tick up as well. I anticipate May and June having as well an uptick, June especially because of Daughters of the Nile. So these are behind 1 month because the STR report I put in about middle of the month and I usually receive it right about this time. So again, you will get May numbers any day now, and then those are lagging behind about 1 month. So that's why you're getting 1 month behind on your ADRs and occupancies. Drawn out, this doesn't change from month to month, but just again, it shows you the forecast hasn't really changed much. We're starting to see, as I talked about last month, a little bit of that separation that historically they've stayed somewhat in line. And over the last 21, 22, 23, we're starting to see occupancies and ADRs actually start to separate a little bit. I think that will correct some of that's the additional hotel rooms and occupancy that'll come into or inventory that'll come into the market that just came in, some of it with Renegade. And then as the AC and Element finish off, I think those numbers will have an impact on these as well. This is a slide that you've seen before, and I actually have 2 new slides that present this information in a different way. So I wanted to show you guys before, as I have done in the prior months. If I take away a slide, I'm going to show you what you've seen historically and what we're going to in the future, and then get feedback if there's any information. This one is very much a snapshot of where we're at year to date and what future business that we've booked on the calendar going forward. It's always come across as a little bit convoluted and confusing to me. Ally gave me a good education on, hey, this is what it really means. And really where I tend to look at is this pipeline here. So when we were looking back last year at the same exact time, at the end of May, we would have total of 281 booked business, 281 events booked. And again, different stages of confirmed, tentative. As we look at that same number today, looking ahead, we're actually pacing ahead about 11 total events or 11 total conventions. So we're up about 4%. And then I will get to show you what this slide, which is how I'm presenting the information in a little different way. Same information, but it actually shows it more on this far left column here. You have your future book economic impact. That blue in the front is just what we've booked looking at as at the end of May. For that current month, what did we book in that month of future booked economic impact? About $1.4 million. At the same time last year, so looking at the very end of May, looking ahead, we had 9.6 million in economic impact on the books. At the same time this year, we're now looking at a $10.4 million economic impact on the books. The reason I'm highlighting this is the metrics have changed on the goals for the sales team. Before there was a lot of leads and how many proposals they could do. Well, when we're full with space, just putting out more busy work was not the best way to use our sales team's time. So we've become more strategic here in making sure that they're focused on things like economic impact and revenue. And that's where this goal comes from. So right there behind it in the green is their year-to-date goal for the team. And right now they're at 10.4 million. They're on pace to hit the goal or outperform the goal on the economic impact. Same story on the columns here to the right for the future booked revenue. Within the month, they booked about $500,000 just in this year alone for the current month or for this last month. Looking back in time, they were at about 2.4 in total future booked revenue. Right now, the same exact time, looking ahead, we're at 2.7. So we're pacing again a little bit ahead there and then on pace to outperform the goal for the sales team to reach their metrics for their goals. And then on the right side, because these numbers just vary in the thousands, it's so different, I just separated it into a different graph, but a very similar story. And that is your future booked room nights. So the team looking last year, 16,000, we're now at 18,000. So they continue to do things that are moving the needle for the district for economic impact and for additional revenues, the center. Comments, questions on the new slides, additional information you'd like to see?
I have a question about the goal, 19.5. But our economic impact goal, you moved to more like 40, right?
That is total within this year. So this is
So this
looking at the future within this year going ahead, how
So
much
that's what they have.
as a goal for the team, for the sales team. Yep, great question. So they're sitting at 19.5 for future booked business. So it's done different ways. We look at it, remember that $40 million goal is economic impact within the year.
Right.
And so because the sales team, a lot of that's local events are driving that number. This is the way that we can really metric out how are they doing from the prior year as a sales team compared to, or how are they doing currently compared to the prior year? And they continue to book more business that's driving economic impact and revenues to the centers, what this is showing. And we'll get into that other slide about economic impact here shortly. Event attendance, I'm probably going to change this just so everybody is aware to the last quarter. As I continue to add each month of the year, it's going to become a very busy slide. And I don't think, unless you guys feel differently, that there's a lot of information to glean from outside the prior quarter. But really, this is a pace report kind of showing where we're tracking on attendees. We can't really control the attendance. So again, this is more of an informational slide for the board. And I can speak to, obviously, March, you got Flower and Garden Show. So there's your variances. We're going to see, obviously, Daughters of the Nile come up in June, and that's going to have a little bit of a variance compared to the history. But we continue to be mindful of the attendees that are coming through. We do have a goal associated with it. We're currently pacing that goal well. So. On economic impact, again, as we just talked about, that goal is 41 million. That was updated as per our increase in catching up to the recommendation of the DI model, the Destination International model, recommending that we capture 100% of local attendees. And before we were only capturing 10% of that. I explained that last month. If anybody has any questions, happy to go through that again. But that's what changed that number from the prior 30-some million to the 41. Currently, again, even with taking all of the accounting into their May alone had 3.6 million. Currently, actual economic impact year to date is 24.8. So again, we're at 61% of the total goal. So we're performing well to that new goal based on that metric getting moved up. Overall guest experience scores, we continue just to see rave comments, reviews from the clients. We did not have last month any of them coming in number 4, so we've only had 3 total for the year. And this is your overall guest experience. We also do metric each department's overalls. So whether that's event planning, whether that's AV, food and beverage, they all have their own metrics, but this is the overall, which gives us a good indicator that the clients are happy. They're very happy with the services, and they've continued to. I think we increased 14 events from last year. On this slide, I had 44 total events last month. So about 14 responses came in from the last month. Some of those are from prior months and some of them are from this actual, the reporting month, but some of them lag behind when responses come in. Just kind of speaking high level about some of the challenges we continue to face. I know I've talked to the board and had this on the agenda last month, but the View Glass update, we have continued ongoing discussions with View and our legal team. Right now, View has come back with a determination that they're going to hold to the warranty. So they will not cover the cost of the install. They will only cover the glass as it fails. And at this point, I've handed off everything into the legal's hands. This company has filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. We've been on top of all of that. Does not change their exposure in this case, according to Mike. And so at this point in time, we've handed it off. We're going to let them send letters and start to shake the trees from the legal side and see if we can get some movement from there. The challenges there with that glass is replacing it 1 off or 2s off does not make sense, and it would have a negative operational impact for us to book business. So we need to do this all at once. And secondly, putting more of that same glass up is actually just continuing. It will eventually also have the same challenges, maybe not fail in the same way, but as electrified glass goes bad, we're having a challenge to getting it replaced on a 4th floor of a convention space. So I'd like to go to standard glass, maybe a tinted glass of some kind, not self-tinting, that would last as long as the glass has around the rest of the facility, which Boise Center West for 34 years has had the same glass around its building, minus a few broken windows here and there. Very rarely, so.
And if you haven't seen it, you should walk over and it's pretty,
It's impactful.
yeah.
I noticed it last time.
Yeah, we've kind of said, and we're kind of getting more lucky than good, and I don't want to jinx us here, but up on the 4th floor, when you get up there, we've had to cover some of the lower sections of windows, those smaller windows, because they were failing at a rate that it was impacting the visualness from the 4th floor. But everything else on the big windows on the 4th floor have yet to fail. And we keep saying that's kind of game over when that happens, because everything else is down on the 2nd floor, not a lot of exposure to the guests. But I feel, and my team knows this, it's that broken glass syndrome where we have a nice facility and that just doesn't fit. It stands out. It's like a sore thumb. So,
How are they failing? So, Madam Chair,
It looks like bubbles.
yeah, there's like bubbles in the glass. So it has a film protectant within 2 pieces of glass that basically is the tinting component of that, and it's electrified. What has happened is the sealant around that glass has failed, and in some cases lets in air or water, which causes that electrified film that's similar to kind of a film that's on this glass here, to start failing, and it bubbles up. And so they've been aware of it since 2021 was the very first piece, and then a lot of them started to fail 2 years later. We've had 1 piece replaced that they came out. We had to pay for the install, so we had to pay for a boom lift, the cost of the labor for the install. But they cover the glass only once it's failed, and that's all that they cover. So that rest of that cost is up to us to replace.
do we have insurance?
We do have insurance, and so I've updated. The insurance company is identifying between legal and them if this is an insurance claim, but legal would like to take a crack at it first before we go down the insurance route. So.
Adam? Do you have anything to add?
I don't. I know Jim Martin in our office is looking at it, is working on it. I have not heard an update beyond what Cody has relayed.
We just, as of this last Friday, they made that determination from their headquarter office that they aren't gonna do anything beyond what the agreement currently states. What I have turned over to the lawyers is there's been several lawsuits that they've actually settled that I'm not sure that they're even aware of that that's happened. They've had, since the Chapter 11 bankruptcy, 2 investors take over as the operator. And I think they're still learning as they go what they have had happen already from other settlements and other lawsuits is my assumption at this point. So.
Thank you.
Parking at the aquatics facility. So I have a meeting actually this Thursday to go over there. I've got another lawyer working on that one from the Holly Troxel side, and we're gonna look at getting that pavement put in where the dirt lot currently sits. work on some other facility related issues, make sure that the facility is being taken care of and what the agreement from the owner versus the operator, like a broken sprinkler head, a few things out there that we just need to address and make sure that are getting taken care of. This will be an RFP process to get a general contractor engaged on that. There's also a lot of code issues or permitting issues that you're going to need to pay attention to because we are interested in putting a crosswalk in from the TOK property across the street where the Fred Meyer is. Is that it? Isn't that a TOK? Am I correct on that?
Managed by.
Managed by, okay. And so that property, we would like to engage them and work on some form of a crosswalk to create a safe crossing. We've heard that those complaints come through either on Nextdoor app or from some of the users that they would like to see more of a safe crosswalk there. So the district thinks this is something as the owner, we could easily do. I've talked to Kristen and Mike and have their support to start getting costs associated with putting concrete or asphalt down on that dirt spot and then working on what the permitting looks like to get the crosswalk accomplished.
Madam Chair, Cody, remind me, this is kind of unrelated, related. Those 300 parking spots we have that we pay for every year.
With 300, are we talking employee parking spots?
I don't know. That was my question. I know we accrue, I was looking in the financials, $10,000 a year for a total of 300,000 that we paid the Capital City Development.
That is our parking.
Exclusive use of 300 parking spots.
That is the garage parking that we use for staff parking. So part-time, full-time, but the number of 300 spots doesn't equate, so I need to double check that. But the cost of that.
And they're in
CCDC
buildings around
correct.
here.
So we have some spaces over across the street, which is attached to the Aspen Lofts in that garage, and a majority of our staff parks over in the Hotel 43. CCDC operates both of those parking garages.
Thank you.
Space and demand. So again, this just talks to more about what we've done on the exploratory committee side, but today I've got a group brought in from Seattle, Matt Rosar over here. Zinger over there. So you'll get a chance to get introduced to them. I would encourage you after the board meeting just to go talk to them, introduce yourself. But they have been brought out. They are with the Pine Street Group. They have helped government entities or entities like our own, and the one that's probably their probably biggest feather in the cap would be helping get the Seattle Convention Center expansion built. So they were the project manager on that, but they've been involved in that project and learning today for about the last 10 to 12 years. All the relationships, all of the parts that take to kind of bring people together, whether that's they had some condemned buildings that they've worked with, some buildings that they needed to move, the location. I think they worked with about 10 different entities in that case to get some space freed up, about 8.6 acres right in the middle of downtown Seattle to be able to develop something which became their new expansion, a $2 billion facility. Kristen and me met with them this morning, had coffee. I think that it's going to be worth having continued ongoing conversations with this group to see what they may be able to offer. The plan would be to bring them back in July to present to the board, kind of a phased out project approach is my goal at this point in time, but more to come on that. Questions?
So it's really just exploratory and picking their brain at this point to see if there's any opportunity.
So Mary Michael and myself, Michael's in the room, just had lunch with them, got a lot of really good information, in particular of how those projects, what they see. We've walked them around downtown. I think Mary Michael's gonna give them a little tour after this here of the downtown core and show them around a little bit more than what we just were able to kind of put eyes on from just a brief walk around the facility and around the downtown core. And already I saw his eyes perk up on a few different things that we've got opportunity that we've discussed, whether that's the arena next door or others. I think that there continues to be just more ongoing conversations about what land or property is available. We could continue to look for expansion.
So what's possible?
Yes. So again, nothing other than just a heads up, more to come on that as we get into next month's meeting. That, I'll stand for questions. None from my own. Stephanie.
Good afternoon. All right, here's the treasurer report. We're still playing with changes on these slides. As you can see, Cody's are all, pretty and colorful. And here I have the old Excel spreadsheet. But we're working on it. As you said, we've had a busy month. Finance has finished up the audit. We had a short month in close, so we'll be working on these. This particular one with fiscal management, I'd really like to break this out, and I'll leave it up to you guys, but I'd like to break these out in the three departments, modules, Boise Center, District, Aquatics, get you guys some comparisons to the previous month and some percentages. So as you can see, revenue's up. We're just at 6 million. Cody had said, we alluded to the busy May. With that, expenses are up as well. So nothing new, no percentages are out of whack. We're still within the industry standard, so we're plugging along just great. This particular slide is our tax revenues. It's what has come in. May's tax revenues was 862,237. This is the first time in 2 years that we've seen a drop in the tax revenues. So it's just a little bit lower than what was budgeted for, and just a tiny bit less than what we were. But we still are on target for an $11 million year, which is what we've all budgeted for and projected.
It is something that we're gonna be taking kind of a proactive approach to. I spoke to Ali and working on, right before the transition from Pat to myself, we started meeting with hoteliers, getting their appetite for group rates and seeing where they were at on incentivizing possibly more groups to come here. I'm hearing that narrative is starting to change from the hotel side because they're seeing this and they're now going, all right, what do we need to do to start talking a little bit more? And so we're gonna re-engage all the hotels that are within the area that are interested in meeting with us and find out where that appetite is for more group rates, because I think we're not gonna change this for 25, it's usually a 26, 27, we're usually 2 years out from the convention group rate side. There might be some conventions within a year that are still picking our way and trying to find a home, but for the most part, this is a number that we know we can impact 27, 28 going forward, so. But it is something that's just an indicator, kind of that post-COVID compression. I know myself and Ali, we tend to look at this in a way that shows if you were to take out 21, 20 and look at 19, we're actually still pacing right in. I think we had some inflated numbers for 22 and 23 due to that post-COVID compression that we continued to talk about at the board meeting.
And it's more demand than ADR, right?
Yes.
This slide depicts our transfers, what has been moved from the district over into the center. The capital, there's been a slight increase. Those just signify that there's been an increase in the capital projects carried over mostly from 2023. Operating, as revenues decrease, it corresponds to the transfer. And as Cody pointed out, we've had 3 big events in May contributed to the increase in revenue, therefore less transfers for the operating account. Bond payment, those are pretty static. That's not going to change a whole lot. So that's right on pace with 2023. This is our investments portfolio. The cash position is up $46,000 from last month. It shows our fixed income at the 24.8 million. Total assets 25.1. We added this particular slide. This is just going to give you guys some percentages. It shows the yield on the investments, on the total return, prior month, prior quarter, prior year, previous month, trailing quarter, and trailing year. Covers all the bases. So this is directly out of Clearwater, as we had stated last month. The Clearwater Analytics has an amazing dashboard. And as I dive more into the accounts and the investments, we'll get you some more information that is pertinent for the board. This one also is from the investment side.
Stephanie, Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
we push the envelope with the state and or Clearwater to expand the number of things we can invest in.
No. I will tell you, I haven't, but more than happy to push any envelope you would like me to.
Well, I mean, Clearwater does other
Yeah,
accounts, and you do a lot of and so always wanting to push the envelope and enhance our return.
Okay. And I think that actually plays right into this slide
It
here.
does, right.
Because that where they're currently at, they're, as you can see, most of our money, or not most, but $8 million of our money is sitting in that 1 to 2 years out. And it's because if we're interested in doing a project more short term, we don't want to put ourselves out to where we would have penalties if we pulled that money back. So right now they're keeping it more short term, and I think they can get a higher return or yield if we were to look further out and they were willing to get, or we're willing to accept a little more risk as well, knowing that they'll get a higher return, but if we need a project short term, if there might be some more penalties on that other side to pull the cash back.
Thank you.
So as Cody stated, he just stole my whole thunder
Sorry,
on
man,
this
it's
slide, so. This is the graph that shows where our money is invested and how far out we are. As the intention of a new project increases, we are gonna wanna look at shortening those investment, those dollar amounts and increasing that to fit around a target date for any project that we do. But it gives you guys an idea as to how far out these maturities are. This is our cash position. We have, the cash has increased a bit. I think last month it was around 22, so. Everything else on here, the restricted funds, stabilization funds, those all stay the same. Those don't deviate month to month. It's really just that cash box that we always look at. And with that is the treasurer's report. Any questions?
Any further questions, comments?
I'd move approval, Madam Chair.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you. On to audit report. Cody?
Well, I'm here. Most of you, I think, have met Abby. She's the manager in charge of our audit. The other person that normally appears is Lee Miller, who's the audit partner, who's on a whitewater trip. So we excused him and we moved up to Abby. And I think you'll just overview the opinion, right?
Perfect.
It's all yours.
Thanks, Jody, Madam Chair, members of the board. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. As Jody mentioned, my name is Abby Beltoff. I am an auditor with our audit firm, Eide Bailly. I was the audit manager in charge of the engagement the last few years. We've had some transition internally. Audra Johnson has taken over as the lead manager. I've been helping behind the scenes, but she's taken the larger push this year. So she's filled me in on all the details of the audit process in conjunction with Lee Miller, who unfortunately, or fortunately for him, is on his whitewater trip today. So I'm happy to present the results of the audit for November 30, 2023. In front of you, you have the audit books. This contains all of the information that's issued as part of the audited financial statements. If you'll flip to the front, we have a table of contents. I want to highlight the reports in here that are our reports as Eide Bailly versus the reports that are prepared and derived from information by management. So the only items in here that are Eide Bailly's deliverables are the independent auditor's report at the beginning of your report and the independent auditor's report on internal controls over financial reporting at the very end of the report. The rest of the information contained within the report is prepared by management. So it's a very long report. We want to thank management for their efforts in preparing all of this year. Appreciate all the work that goes in throughout the year, but also through this audit process as well. So thank you for that. As we go through, one item I want to get into is management's discussion and analysis. This presents really a high-level overview of the results for the year. So this is a great intro. I know we're a few months out from November 30, but still some good highlights as far as comparative information for this fiscal year versus the previous fiscal year. So that's a kind of a great high-level overview there. Flipping forward to our auditor's opinion, the main item that I wanted to highlight here is our audit opinion, we did issue an unmodified, or also referred to as a clean opinion. That is the highest level of an opinion that we can issue. So really what that indicates is that the information that you're receiving throughout these monthly reports throughout the year, there are no modifications to that came to our attention that are material. There were new types of journal entries or proposed journal entries as a result of the audit process. So really appreciate the efforts again that management's put into preparing that information through the year that did result in that clean audit opinion. At the end of the report, I mentioned there is an internal control report as well. When we do our audit, we do that and consider items of internal control specifically as they relate to financial reporting. So we do not conduct a separate audit over internal controls, but we do look at those internal controls that would directly relate to the financial process. No deficiencies or anything that rise to the level of needing to be communicated in this meeting. There were no findings included in that letter. So again, shows you that the processes in place that you do have are functioning appropriately. Additionally, not included here in your packet, we issue a final letter to governance as well, which we can get copies of for you all here as well. Just some items that I wanted to highlight that are included in there. These are our required communications throughout the audit process. If anything came to our attention that modified our procedures, if there were any modifications to the opinions, things like that that were required to communicate. The one item I wanted to mention is that GASB Statement 96 related to subscription information technology arrangements, also referred to as SIBITAs because that is a mouthful, was effective for the district this year. We did analyze that as part of the audit process in conjunction with management as well as others to analyze if there were any of those IT technology arrangements that needed to be analyzed and included in the financial statements. If you'll remember to last year, we implemented the leasing standard. This is very similar in relation to IT arrangements. So it's the concept that if you do have those long-term arrangements where you're paying for some sort of information technology, that should be brought onto the books as an asset and a liability. So that process was conducted. There was nothing that rose to the level that needed to be recorded, but I did want to highlight that was something that was looked at as part of the audit process. Additionally, pleased to report no difficulties with management, no other information that would rise to the level to need to be communicated as part of that process here today. That kind of concludes the main items that I wanted to talk about. Happy to go into more details of the data, the audit process, or welcome any questions at this time.
Any questions?
Well, Madam Chair, I'd just comment that Abby said that there had been turnover at I-Bailey. Well, there'd been turnover at the district as well, with a new director and a new treasurer. What is your other title?
Director of Finance, sir.
Director of Finance. And so I want to compliment everybody on getting it done. I met with Lee Miller on a number of occasions to make sure from the board standpoint that we were having it all covered. We're a month late getting it out. My decision was we'd rather have it right than early, and it's right. So appreciate the good work by our staff as well.
Great,
Thank you.
thanks. Anything else? Questions, comments? Is this something we need to approve?
I believe, yeah, it's an action item to approve.
So move.
Have a second? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you so much, Abby, to you and your team. Thank you, Jody, for leading the charge. On to the legislative update.
Madam Chairman.
Always nice to go from where the books balance to where they don't.
Well put. Well put. So we were in here right after the election. We gave you a little thumbnail sketch of kind of what happened in the election. It was all kind of brand new. We've been able to do a little bit of analysis and kind of synthesize what really happened in the election. In Idaho, you know, we have the Democratic Party, and then we have a giant caucus of the Republican Party. And within the Republican Party, there's that schism. There's what we call the Freedom Foundation group. It's very, I won't call them right wing, but a very radical group of the Republican Party. And then we have what I call the legislators that really just want to come in here and balance the budget and do what's right for the state of Idaho. This year, it was kind of all over the map. First of all, there was a record amount of money spent. I think the Freedom Foundation Group spent somewhere around $1.6 million. And I think, you know, the business community of Idaho spent somewhere around 1.4. So even in a year where the business community really tried to step up and spend money, couldn't spend as much as what I call the Freedom Foundation Group. Those folks are grabbing money from all over the country, mostly from a lot of money came out of Texas this time. There's some money out of Pennsylvania. These Young American for Liberties group came up here and spent, I think they spent upwards of maybe $700,000. But there's a lot of outside money coming into the state, which really brought a conversation in towards the end of this election cycle. And after the election, a lot of legislators are saying, we really need to take a look at some of this campaign finance reform stuff and how do we put a little brighter light on what money's coming in, when it's coming in, how it's coming. So in the Senate, there were 5 incumbent senators that lost their seats. There was one in North Idaho, Ada County, Chuck Winder, the pro tem, lost. One in Canyon County. Down in Twin Falls, there's one in Twin Falls. District 8, which goes from pretty much McCall. Huh?
Valley County.
McCall, yeah, it goes up from McCall all the way down to Mount Home. And so those 5 seats, of that, 2 shifted. The Freedom Foundation picked up 2 of those seats. And so the shift of the Senate became very interesting because there was an interesting balance this last cycle in the Senate, Republican Party, the leadership of the Senate. Well, I think what we're seeing happening is we're right at break point where there's just as many on each side of that. So who's going to be in the leadership next year? That's left to be seen. Chuck Winder's leaving. Abby Lee, the assistant majority leader, is retired. So we're going to have at least 2 new members of Senate leadership. The caucus chairman is talking about not running again. And the only one to be left in that would be Kelly Anthon. He's talking about running for pro tem, so he could actually be defeated and potentially, I don't know what's going to happen in that race. But Scott Grove, the corporation chairman, has announced that he's running for pro tem seat that's been vacated by Chuck Winder. So there's a ton of movement in the Senate right now. Nobody really knows how that's all going to shake out. You're going to have I think a whole slate of a bunch of new chairmen in the Senate. So the Senate we saw this last session could be a totally different Senate that we see in the next session. In the House, 10 incumbents lost their seats. 4 of them shifted to the Freedom Foundation side. I don't see that as much as a shift in what we saw happening, maybe as in the Senate. I think it's going to stay pretty status quo. I think the defeat of Megan Blanksma, who was the majority leader, and she ended up losing her seat, that will make a difference in the body to some degree. She was a good legislator. Controversial, but a good legislator. That leadership may stay probably the same. There'll be one change in it, in that the assistant majority leader, Representative Dixon from the North, is retired. So there'll be a new position there. And then there's some talk over in Eastern Idaho. The caucus chairman, Dustin Manwaring, is in a very, very difficult race over there in Pocatello, which has been traditionally predominantly Democrat district. He could lose that seat. So what we're seeing now is just, I mean, we're going through a very interesting shift in Idaho politics, especially in the leadership elements of the body. In the executive branch, the budget director for Governor Little has gone over and become the health and welfare director. So they brought Lori Wolf in, who has been around to 2 or 3 different agencies. She was kind of governor's fix-it agency. She'd go in and fix those things up. She's really good with budgets. She's a good policy person. She went to become the budget director for the governor. So even in the governor's office, we're seeing those shifts. We're going to see a few more shifts in his office. His general counsel, Brady Hall, just left. So the governor's office is changing around some people. So it's a dynamic. We're seeing a lot of movement in the political process right now, and it hasn't really sorted itself out. On top of that, we were just working on this water issue this last week or so on the fight between water, water holders in the state. But in that conversation, that was in a conversation with Governor Little, and he kept cautioning the lieutenant governor, don't spend any money because we don't have any. He said the last 2 months of revenues are really showing a downturn, and they think that that's going to continue on to the end of the year. So this next session could be, there've been a lot of spending the last 3 or 4 years. I think this session, you're going to see the cutting start taking place, and that always presents a whole different face of the legislature. So that's it, kind of real quick. As we move into the summer and fall, we'll see more development of what's going to happen in the legislature, but change is coming. Any questions?
Good thing we gave back 350 million a couple years ago, right?
No kidding. Yeah, yeah. There'll be a lot in education this year too.
What do you see? Do you have any idea what will be the issues you think coming up for the next session?
Yeah, revenues. I mean, we'll fight over the revenue budgets. There'll be a big fight over how they budget. They went back last year, they went to this maintenance budget scheme. I think there were a lot of people that didn't like that. There'll be a pushback on that. There's always been a tax cut. I don't think there'll be a tax cut next year. School choice is going to be a huge issue. They defeated some members on that. A lot of school choice money came into the state, outside money. So we'll see maybe a shift in how we manage the school funding issues in Idaho. Those are the things I see that are going to really take up a lot of time. I think this water issue, there's going to be a big over the east side of the state and everybody along the Snake River Plain, all the water right holders, how they manage that. The aquifer is depleting, and they've got to find a way to buoy that back up and try to renovate the aquifer the best way they can by putting more water in it. So that'll be a big discussion too.
They can leave us alone.
No. It's the short answer to a long answer.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Brandon? I don't know. You want to introduce or let Brandon go?
Bring up our safety security manager, Brandon Doty. Brandon has been with the facility for many, many years, started out in operations and has grown into this role. We continue to increase the size of that department in particular. Brandon gets to share some highlights and just recognize Brandon's efforts and how proud I am of what he does for us on a day-to-day basis. Security is one of those things that you don't know what you don't see. And in particular, we have maintained a safe space for our employees and guests for quite a while, and Brandon's a big reason for that. So excited to have him present to you today.
Chair, members of the board, thanks for having me and allowing me some time to present on the updates for the Safety and Security Department. Usually we're the department that tries to stay behind the scenes. We try not to be too in your face or wake everybody up with the scary stuff. But I do appreciate the opportunity to speak about some fun stuff we have been working on over the last few months. So looking ahead, actually, we'll start there. We have the loading dock bollard barrier project that is slated to kick off July 1st. So in a couple of weeks, we'll be starting our construction. There's little to no impact on our events or some of the operations that we're doing in-house, which is really good. And it's hard to find that time to plug construction projects in, as you've all been made aware with previous ones. The loading dock bollard barrier project, just for historical reference, in 2018 with the Department of Homeland Security, we did an infrastructure survey, formerly known as a vulnerability assessment with the Protective Security Advisor for the state of Idaho. And one of the vulnerabilities that was identified was our loading dock being High Avenue approach angle from Grove Street right into our main ballroom. So the recommendation from DHS at that time was install some vehicle mitigation barriers of some sort. So as you can see over the years, in 2021, we did a threat vector analysis with a contractor out of Boise. It was neat to know that there's some local folks in town that can do these kinds of things and help us with both the analysis and then the design for the construction project. which we did later that year in 2021. So the bollards that you see in the picture below is what roughly it'll look like on the loading dock. We chose this design. There's some history that I'd be happy to talk to you offline. But we chose this design based on how we could space them apart and still maintain their crash rating. That allows us to move carts and other lifts still through those barriers as they're in an armed position, but they would mitigate any vehicles that are coming up on the loading dock. We are at this time still working on figuring out what that operating procedure looks like. More information to come. And this was one of the projects Stephanie and Cody had referred to that was budgeted in 2023 in the last fiscal year that we ended up moving into this one. Based on availability, steel, and trying to find time to put all the equipment in, start construction. So something that we hope at the next board meeting we'll have maybe not the next one, but 2 from now, we might have some pictures to share. So exciting things. So talking about Department of Homeland Security, we did our infrastructure survey tool. We had a refresh in January 2024. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, known as CISA, they kind of became their own standalone agency after 2018 when we did the original IST. So we worked with CISA this year in January and a new protective security advisor to do our infrastructure survey tool, which essentially it is an assessment to identify and document the overall security and resilience of a facility. It goes into a long string of questioning. It takes about 8 hours. And we've had to tap a lot of folks on our executive team and other operational departments to help complete those types of assessments. But we get a lot of really good information out of them. I'm still waiting on the full report and recommendations from CISA. But the information that we do receive in that report is considered protected critical infrastructure information. So that really longhand protects us from having that information. It's free from public disclosure. So if you're interested, if you want to learn a little bit more, I'd be more than happy to get the report. Cody will have the report, but I'm more than happy to help interpret some of the information that they put in there. As you know, it can be lengthy and very filled with acronyms. So, what's nice about this report is we're able to compare it to 2018's report and see a lot of growth and changes. And the other side of where they're using this information is they compare us against other convention centers and like facilities that have done the same report. So in this iteration, we were compared against 117 different convention centers, which is very impressive. We also have to take into account some of them are municipal facilities. So they have law enforcement, they have some different capabilities and different resources that they have accessible to them that we don't. So there's some grain of salt that we have to take with every section in this question. But overall, it was really promising seeing the improvements, the growth, the change that we've done over the last 6 years. Particularly in our security management. As you all know, I have been in my role since 2018, and there's been a lot of changes over the last 6 years. And then a little bit more history behind that and some of the questioning that they ask. Information sharing has been a huge growth area for us, and making sure information sharing less the IT, more and working with partner agencies like local law enforcement, state, federal agencies, and making sure that we're sharing information and also a recipient of information that can be helpful for us as we're working through special event planning. The last one is security activity. That's very high overarching. What are some of the activities that we've done? Did you do one of these assessments? So very basic metric that they use, but those are the 3 notable areas that they identified for us as large improvements over 2018's report. The other part of this is also in January, we did our infrastructure visualization platform. That's a new program or offering that CISA has offered to critical infrastructure owners and operators is very brief. It's like the Google Maps view of the entire facility. So it's kind of that street view. You can cursor around and see where critical assets are, what the facility looks like from the inside, and then all the way around, kind of navigate through. This information is really good for law enforcement partners, so they can become a little bit more familiar without having to actually step foot on property. They can take it back in their agencies, they can put it on a projector and screen and, you know, navigate through Boise Center and see what it looks like with larger groups or during times that might not be convenient for me to sit down and share all that with them. That's also PCII information, so it's protected from public disclosure, but I'd be more than happy to share it with you. It's rather neat. Both of these things were free, other than our time that we spent helping put them together. So very big, very exciting, and it's, as I said before, nice to see a lot of positive growth. Again, thanks to the board and support that you've all given me, my department, through Cody. So the next slide is about workers' compensation. There's some graphic on here. This is the top line in the orange shows our reports. So those are the incident reports or employee injury reports that they send to me and the HR department. Anytime somebody gets hurt, they'll report an injury, let us know what's going on. The bottom line in the darker blue is our claims. So those are the incident reports that the individual with the injury will go seek medical attention at a doctor's office or a hospital. These two are really important, and I like to see the trends that they have and that we've been tracking. Incident reports based on the number of employees that we have, we would assume we'll have quite a bit of incident reports. That tracks along with when we had the expansion in 2017. During COVID, you can see that pretty steep drop, and then coming back out of COVID, we've kind of rebounded on our incident reports. It's nice to see the claims have been a much more steady transition over the years and through some of the events that we've experienced, but those trends from the incident reports are always helpful for us to identify what kind of injuries are happening around the workplace. Are there any hazards that we need to be identifying before it turns into a claim? And just having a better grasp and outlook on the workplace. It gives us an opportunity as well to address those and help identify trainings that we can push towards those teams or departments if it's specific to any one department. The claims, really, I'll jump over to the experience modification for this policy year. So a lot of words. This year we're at a 0.67. That is based on a 1-point scale, so it can ebb and flow, and it results ultimately in savings on our insurance premiums. And the experience modification gets assessed through a couple of factors. What kind of safety programs do you have going on? What kind of trainings do you have? How are you doing your incident reporting? How are you tracking and responding to incidents that happen around the workplace? Any incidents that do go to claim, are those employees returning to work, or is there time loss because of whatever injury they got? That's one of the larger things that kind of pushes that scale back and forth. But I can confidently say our HR and executive team do a very good job at helping make sure that employees that do have an injury and have to seek workers' compensation, we're doing everything that we can to get them back in and not have that time loss for an employee. In addition to insurance premium savings, this information is really good for us to track because that return to work, not only, and statistically it shows, employees are recovering a lot faster from whatever injuries they're sustaining, and it increases that employee culture that much more. It helps show that we're caring for those folks. We want them to come back. They are valuable to the organization, everything that they do. We just get that added benefit of saving some money on our premium. So this last year, the insurance premium savings were just about $36,000, which is a fairly substantial number. It was 33%. So yeah, a lot very good efforts from the executive team down to everybody on our staff.
Jump in and just highlight what you mentioned from the HR side. What we try to do is if we have had a issue where that we've had a claim and that the injury has resulted in work loss, we work with that employee to try to bring them back on light duty as soon as possible. So we'll reduce that time of work loss. And that's whether it's rolling silverware for the food and beverage department, coming in, kind of playing a greeter, more like a security, kind of a lobby attendant that can help guide guests. That's how we put them back to work. So we get very creative in how we can put them in light duty. It also, to Brand's point, shows we care, we want you back, but it has a double benefit with that. The employee gets back to work as soon as possible, plus we get savings. That 0.67 is a goal of mine with the board for the EMOD score. So this is one of my metrics that I'm measured on. And again, we're about 33% the mean. The mean's about 1, that even. So we're outperforming that by about 33, so 50%.
So incident reports and claims, I'm meeting with Cody, the executive team, in our HR department quarterly to make sure that we're going over anything and we're not getting too surprised by anything that's happening out on the floor. We're able to address things from a high level and then start implementing or pushing things down to help prevent injuries and prevent additional claims or incident reports. The last slide that I have is about my department growth. So I don't remember the last time I presented to the board. I may have been a team of 1, but over the course of time, and much to the support of the board, and our executive team, I've had the opportunity to expand my department. So right now we're sitting with 7 part-time security staff. There's 6 of them on the picture below, and then 1 full-time assistant safety and security manager, who's Will Trimble. Probably saw him downstairs as he got in the building. It's been a great group of folks, and from our kind of culture, from every other department, we're very focused on customer service and trying to help people get in and take as best of care as we can of those folks. Daughters of the Nile was a great testament to that. I've never held a door for so long. But those folks that were coming in were very appreciative, and just being able to talk to a smiling face and ask for directions was very nice for me to see, and very impressive to see my team doing the exact same thing or taking initiative to do that. So I'm very proud of everybody that I have on my department, and all the focus that they put into what they do every day. Not saying that to bash on any other third-party subcontractor that we use. They're great, but I think the in-house has been a very great added benefit to the organization. Going over some numbers, so internal utilization was around 46% of any security orders that came through for Boise Center. So we were getting 46% of the business. There was still 54% that I'm hoping that we can start taking a little bit and piece off at a time. Year to date, we're around 65%. What that doesn't include is any client ordered security. So there are some events, I think Boise Flower and Garden Show is one that they procure their own security through an approved vendor of ours. We don't track those metrics, but I have, just to see what that difference would be if we were to have that piece of business, which would put us closer to a 56% average if we had that. So the other nice thing, aside from having a heavy focus on that customer service arm, is we're able to follow a lot of industry standards for security requirements or security training. So we're looking at things like IAVM, or International Association of Venue Managers. They have a safety and security committee, and some trainings that I've been fortunate to go to, that I've been able to glean and provide training to, which I'm not sure that I can say quite the same about other entities, organizations around the valley. So that's all that I have. Are there any questions?
Just really highlight what the goal here is just similar to the audio visual, food and beverage being done in-house. It allows us to control the quality of the service we're providing and really kind of fit that culture feel when you walk into the building. Your first experience, whether it's through the front door or wherever it's at, that's a lot of takeaways for people, is that initial experience when they walk into the building. So having security that's more customer service focused and culture focused and welcoming and helpful, also knowledgeable about the facility, that's stuff we weren't getting in that third party approach. Is they just couldn't answer the questions. little bit less engaged in probably the buy-in for what we're doing here in that given day for an event wasn't quite the same. So this has been a great transition. I'm a risk manager at heart, so I remember me and Brandon talking, I was like, the more people you add, there's a higher risk there. But this has been something that, and again, I'll say this in the sense that I always talk about it with the custodial department. A clean bathroom is your expectation when you walk in. Nobody ever hears like, bathroom's too clean, way to go, it's awesome. That's what you expect. A safe facility is what people expect, and you don't know what you don't see. So the stuff that this team has to deal with, whether that's as the population grows in downtown Boise and the people coming through our doors sometimes aren't part of the event, the way that they handle those in professional, in a helpful way, courteous to the individuals, has just been really great to see that happen and that growth of that department in particular. It just fits with what we do here at Boise Center so well. So
What are your requirements for the client to have security?
dependent on, so we have some basic numbers that are based off of the number of attendees. That drives one metric, and then additional components, whether you're adding alcohol, how much alcohol that is being consumed, how long the alcohol is being consumed, all of that, how much food that they're having, not food, all of those things are taken into consideration. And then we can elevate. The current contract allows us to dictate what we would require for a safe, secure environment for that. We try to be as reasonable as possible, but yeah, it's dictated off of attendance and the needs of the space or what they're going to be doing in the space.
And they can choose to hire internal or external?
Yeah, we have an approved vendor list, third party that Brandon manages, and we make sure those are vetted, so that way they can say, hey, my brother can do security. Well, that isn't gonna qualify for what we need, certificates of insurance, many other reasons. So we have an approved list, and then we try to really take on as much of that as we can. Some of it, I mean, I think is if we continue to staff up, we'll be able to continue to see that number rise, because I think that so many clients are happy with how we can manage our internal staff versus a third party. I have to kind of go to a supervisor or another manager from a third party if we're not happy with the quality of service we're getting, and manage it that way.
Any questions, comments?
I just recognize a couple of this team has even done more recently some life-saving measures on an individual in the building. So again, this team does deal with things that every day most people don't see or deal with, so.
I think that's it, right? So seeing no other business for the board, the meeting's adjourned.
It's good.